All right, here we are. We're in chapter 5, the final chapter of the novel. Chapter 5, part 1. And I'm going to talk about pages 159 to 168. So at the very bottom of page 159, that's when she examines the village samples. And she says the moss from the forehead of one of the eruptions, the ones that look like a human, splinters of wood, a dead fox, a rat. The wood was indeed wood. The rat was indeed rat. The moss and the fox, though, and notice that she uses three dots here, were composed of modified human cells. So there we go. It finally corroborates with the theory that I had mentioned earlier that somehow people turn into these creatures. They have human cells attached to them. The question is how? How do they have these cells attached to them? And then, of course, she says, "Where lies the strangling fruit? It came from the hand of the sinner. I shall bring forth the seeds of the dead." So things that should have died can come back yet again in very strange and uncanny ways. And then she remembers some of the uncanny creatures along the way. The boar on the way to base camp, the strange dolphins, the tormented beast in the reeds, even the idea that replicas of members of the 11th expedition had crossed back over. All the supported evidence of my microscope. So finally, now things are starting to somewhat make sense. They're very observable. It's becoming scientific again. So she gets involved. Transformations were taking place here. And as much as I had felt a part of a natural landscape, I could not deny that these habitats were transitional in a deeply unnatural way. And notice that Vandermeer emphasizes unnatural way on page 160. That is a representation of the uncanny. So if you want to talk about the uncanny in chapter 5, there are so many ways you could do this. You could talk about this here. You could talk about what happens next with her husband, what she finds in her husband's journal, and of course her encounter with the crawler. All of these apply to the uncanny. So whereas a little bit of control was a part of the first three chapters, the last two chapters in particular are very much focused on the uncanny. A perverse sense of relief overtook me. At least now I have proof of something strange happening. So now she can verify it, right? It's not just theoretical anymore. It's also empirical. You can see it, and there is evidence for it. And now she finally opens up her husband's journal. It's very interesting that she waits until the very end to read it. And of course, what she finds is something extremely, extremely important. And again, she has hidden it, I think, mainly because she didn't want you to feel that she's not objective enough, right? Oh, you're reading your husband's journal. Of course, you're going to be in love again. Of course, you're going to want to say things about it. So, she hides it until now. But now, best time to do it. Because as we find out on page 165 to 167, something incredible happens. And this happens towards the bottom of page 165. And note that it's also a surveyor and her husband that return to the tower. So they're the last two on the journey. The surveyor and my husband, the medic, returned to the tower at dusk. Why is not apparent. There began to be breaks that corresponded to the passage of some hours, but during the night, very important, whenever it's night, something bad or crazy is about to happen. They saw a ghastly procession heading into the tower. What do I mean by ghastly procession? People walking into the tower. Ooh, spooky late at night. Why would they be doing that? 7 of the 8 members of the 11th expedition, including a doppelganger of my husband and the surveyor. Okay, so what are doppelgangers? Doppelgangers are literally doubles of someone else. They're copycats, right? They act and imitate you. They don't just look like you, they imitate you. So if you always kind of talk like this, they're also going to talk like this, right? And they're going to do the same movements as you do. So the doppelganger is also important to the uncanny because the double has always been a part of Freud's theory of the uncanny. It's something that is so familiar because it's just like you, it resembles you, and yet it's not you. We see this a lot in movies and animation and other forms of art, right? And the doppelganger is supposed to be the ultimate foil, the opposite of who you are. Even if they're as close as you are, there's something about them that isn't normal. And in the case of the film, they do a very good job of this. They show the husband looking exactly the same. And also, when Natalie Portman encounters the creature, it does essentially mimic her, right, in almost every way. And so, this is from the perspective of her husband. And there before me, myself, I walked so stiffly. I had such a blank look on my face. It was so clearly not me. And yet, it was me. Okay, myself. And notice that on page 165, Vandermeer emphasizes myself, right? You know who you are. But how could there be someone that's exactly you? And again, it was so clearly not me. So even though it was me, it's clearly not me. The movements aren't the same. The style is not the same. I'm outgoing. This person does not seem outgoing. Or should I say creature? And so he's kind of scared and taken aback, right? This is that kind of fear that you get in the uncanny when it's something so similar and yet unfamiliar at the same time. So this is the ultimate fear, right? Is to be copied in some way, as if you were just going to be a copy of something else, making you powerless to really discover who you really are. We did not try to stop them. Somehow, it seemed impossible to try to stop ourselves. Again, that's that sort of paralysis that you get from the uncanny. And I won't lie, we were terrified. Yes, I would be terrified if I saw a version of myself that wasn't supposed to be there either. We could do nothing but watch until they had descended. Remember, they're going into the tower, but it's not a tower. What is it? It's a living creature. So why are they going into the living creature? We could do nothing but watch until they went down. For a moment afterward, it all made sense to me, everything that had happened. We were dead. We were ghosts roaming a haunted landscape. And although we didn't know it yet, people lived normal lives here. Everything was as it should be here. But we couldn't see it through the veil. The interference, which, if you remember, interference showed up in chapter 1. Oh, excuse me, no, it was transference. That's what it was. They call it a transference. And so the idea is that perhaps they've been controlled all along and that things are not what they appear to be in Area X. That perhaps all of them died the moment they reached the border, and as a result, these ones are essentially the ones that live with through them or because of them. They've taken their DNA, the Area X has taken their DNA and turned it into a sort of double. The question is, where are they going? And what's going to happen? And remember, what happens at the 11th expedition a year later? Mysteriously, everyone comes back, which indicates that perhaps, and it's kind of indicated here, that her husband does not come back. So who does come back? It's his body double, which is why, again, it's so uncanny, right? Because when the other one comes back, he's not like him. Looks like him, but that's as far as it goes, right? He can't remember. Why does he like that boat again? He doesn't know. He just knows that his double in the other world of Area X loved it, but he doesn't know why, right? And so they wait hidden in the trees beyond the tower for several hours to see if the doppelgangers return. But they don't. The surveyor wanted to kill them. My husband wanted the interrogator question them. In their shock, neither of them made much of the fact that the psychologist was not among their number, which means he became the crab, right? So why did he become the crab? Maybe it's because he died by natural causes and the nature literally took his body, took the DNA, and then put it inside of a crab. At one point, a sound like hissing steam emanated from the tower and a beam of light shot out into the sky, then abruptly cut off. But still no one emerged. No one came out, right? And eventually the two men returned to base camp. So what happened? The assumption and what's being suggested here or argued is that this beam of light literally shoots them outside of Area X back into the world that we live in, right? The world that she is from. And so they separate, and that's when, um, the medic, her husband, decides to go to the sort of North Island that is yet to be discovered. And she's going to say at the end of this novel that that's also where she plans to go. So, spoiler alert, the end of the story, this is where she decides she wants to go. And again, she's trying to say, after reading the journal, I was left with the comfort of that essential recurring image, aka the motif of my husband putting out to sea in a boat he had rebuilt, out through the crashing surf to the calm just beyond, of him following the coastline north, alone, seeking in that experience the joy of small moments remembered from happier days. A very romantic image. And by romantic, I don't mean a love image. It's an image of someone who wants to explore the unknown, the uncanny, who's not afraid to take it to the next level. It made me fiercely proud of him. It showed resolve. It showed bravery. Perhaps these are essential traits as well for someone going through Area X. So again, I'm going to say those again. Fiercely proud of him. Resolve. Bravery. Perhaps these are essential traits for people who go into Area X. And so, I wondered if he kept a journal still, or if the dolphin's eye had been familiar for a reason other than that it was so human. So she's suggesting here maybe that dolphin could have been her husband. But soon enough I banished this nonsense. Some questions will ruin you if you are denied the answer long enough, so she's not going to wait and find out. So in this next part here, we are going to talk about the wonderful, wonderful ending of this novel, in which he goes inside the tower and encounters the crawler. And this is the end of this novel. So this is going to be such an interesting aftermath, and we will talk about that soon.